Okay, for today, we're starting off with some review problems for those linear programming questions. The test is going to be tomorrow. And so this one, I'd start by solving these guys for y, and then putting them in your calculator. And some kids are going to say, but I can't put it in the calculator. Yeah, you're right. X equals 0 can't go in the calculator because it's a vertical line. Your calculator cannot graph x equals things. So how are you supposed to find a spot like this where two things cross? Well, if this one's x equals 0, then you can stick x equals 0 in this equation, which was like y equals -1/2 x plus 100. You can just stick the 0 in right there. Use algebra to solve it. You don't just have a calculator, you have your brain, which can substitute one equation in another. That's how you can find vertices if you don't have a calculator, is put one equation into the other and solve. Then you'd be able to tell what y is. 0, comma, and then again, it's easy, but I don't want to tell you the answer for it. All right, so give this one a try. You're going to graph all the constraints. You're going to find that, let's say it all looks like this when it's all done. What are the important spots? These spots. And those spots then need to go into a profit function. What is the profit function? You make the profit function. P of x, or just P, equals, let's say it's 3x plus 2y. That's not right, but you can make one of those from this information about the profit. Then you figure out which spot gives you the maximum profit. All right? I need you to figure out this problem from beginning to end. Granted, you didn't have to write the equations, but and take the time to plow through this thing. Because if you can't do it now, what makes you think you're going to be able to do it tomorrow? All right, I'm going to pause for a second while you work on that. All right, so you got two lines here. This is not to scale and everything, but you definitely have one that's steeper than the other. This one is way steeper. Okay, so if I was going to clean this up to make it look more like the real thing, I would probably make one of the lines has a slope of 3 and starts at 400. So that's going to start way up here and go very steep. One of the other ones has y less than or equal to -1/2 x plus 100. That starts at 100 and does not go very steep. It goes like that. That's the blue one. And then last, the other two are just saying you have to stay above 0 in both directions. And that keeps us in this little zone right here. All right, now what are the key points? 0, 0 is kind of a lame one because you aren't going to sell anything and therefore you're going to make 0 profit. It's easy to put in. You can just say 0, 0 gives you 0 profit. But the other spots are harder to find. Those two I would have graphed on the calculator, this and this, and I would have used second calculate intersect. If you couldn't see it on your calculator, it's probably because you weren't using big enough numbers on your window. All right, once you found it, you would know it. Okay, I don't have my dice of destiny out here, but I'll just call in a random person over here. Miss Mac, what do you think this crossing point was here? I agree. 120, 40. Raise your hand if you were able to figure that one out. Awesome. Now, sometimes these are even harder, actually, because you can't just do second calculate intersect. But what that is the y-intercept, which is where x equals 0. So if you grab this blue equation here, and I follow it up to the blue equation here, and I set y equal to 0 to find, I want to find the y-intercept, so I'm going to set x equal to 0. If I put a 0 right there, there it is. That's got to be 100. 0, 100. And last but not least, this is the hardest one, I'd say, to find. And that's this equation, except we know that it touches the x-axis, which means y equals 0. When you put a 0 where the y is, you can solve that. That's how you can know where that spot is. Could you also do second calculate intersect with that one? Yes, because y equals 0 is something you can graph. So if you graph this and you graph that and you see where they cross, it works. Either way, I can't remember what that spot is other than I know it's comma 0. What was that number, 100 and something? 133, very good. 133 comma 0. Any questions about those two spots? Actually, there's 3 spots. These 3 corners, here, here, and here, now we need values for them. 0 comma 100, you put it in your profit function, which is profit 2 for each x plus 1 for each y. 2x plus 1y. There's an R2 level question on the test, is write that little equation. If you don't write that equation in the box that says, what's your optimizing equation, then you've lost one of your R2s. How many of you actually wrote 2x plus 1y as an equation? Good. If you forgot to actually write that anywhere, then you never wrote the optimizing equation, you'd have lost some points. Yes? 1y is the same thing as y, yes. You do also have to have a p in front or whatever it is. All right. Then, if I stick these actually in, would you please save me some time? Actually, I can do this one in my head. 1 for each y, so 100 y's, so it'd be 100 bucks. Then this one was 120 comma 40. Can you save me some time? What did that, when you stuck it in the equation, what did you get for 120 comma 40? 280? Okay. All right. And then the last spot is 133 comma 0. I can do that in my head because it's 2 for each x. So 2 times 133 is 266. If you have all of this, you pretty much can't go wrong. The only thing you had to do, sorry, double number there, 266. If I'm picking between those 3, it's just have to know which one's the biggest. 280. If you're doing profit, you always want to maximize profit. If you're doing costs, what do you want to do? Minimize the costs. All right. Okay, so there's a problem kind of from the beginning to the end, but you didn't have to write these equations. So that's what I want you to try in this next one. I'm going to pause while I get ready. So here's one where I have the words, and you have to, in turn, make this a lot like the other one. Make the constraint equations. It tells you which one's x and which one's y. You write the equations down, and then you graph them. And then you see where they cross and find those corners of the feasible region. All right, I'm going to pause while you work that one out. This is a tough one. Final answer is you want to tell me which one will make you the most profit. Selling this many of this and that many of that. Something comma something. Some point will give you the best profit. All right, I'm going to pause while you work on that. Part where I need to go through this one with you. Now, this is important for you to understand. Unlike a graphing test where the graphs have to be super accurate, these do not have to be super accurate, but you do need to know where things cross. So, for example, when it says that these are x's, the banana bread's x, you'd need to label this with banana bread on the x-axis. If you forgot that, then, oh, there goes partial credit for not having labeled this properly. All right, then over here we have the other stuff, which is the Pop-Tarts. Okay, next thing. 20 slices a day of the banana bread, so that's like an x equals number. Do you get that x equals things cannot go in the calculator? Okay, so then I need to stay shade on this side of that line. Then I'm going to make a 50 and assume it's like right about here. X equals 50, and I got to shade to the left side of that line, so that contains you in between those two lines. Next, did you remember to say that x, oh wait a minute, the y-axis, no, the x-axis is y equals 0, except y has to be greater than or equal to 0. Did you remember that logically you can't have negative pieces of banana bread or Pop-Tarts, and therefore you need to stay inside quadrant 1? You couldn't be over here, and you couldn't be down here. Okay, so don't forget to include those in your list of your constraints. X has to be greater than or equal to 0 because we're in the real world. You can't have negative Pop-Tarts and you can't have negative pieces of banana bread. Maybe a bad experience. You could say it was a negative experience, but you can't have negative pieces of banana bread. Yes. True. But in your list of functions, you should have this. Just make it a standard practice. I understand that x is greater than 20 overrules it, but it doesn't mean they're both there. Both equations are there still. If you don't have them, I will mark it wrong. So don't make the mistake of just trying to say, well, x has got to be bigger than 20, so obviously it's bigger than 0. Just include these. These are called common sense constraints. And any of the pre-calc 2, but in this class, any of the higher algebra teachers, you don't have x equals 0 or x bigger than 0 and y is bigger than 0 on your list, you'll have to lose something. So better to learn it now than on the test. All right, next, we had to have this equation that said that they will make at most 15 Pop-Tarts. Well, Pop-Tarts are y. At most 15. Y has to be less than or equal to 15. So then there's a line that goes across here wherever you said 15 was, and it had to be under that. So I'm getting close. And last but not least, I needed to have this line that would go diagonal, and that would be this equation. That x plus y, the total that they can sell, at most 60 total items, less than or equal to 60. How many of you had x plus y has to be less than or equal to 60? Good. That's one of the toughest ones to find. Now, when you actually graph it here, it's going to be hard for me to know whether it goes like this, or whether it goes like this, or whether it goes like this. It's really hard to know exactly where that line goes. I get that. So what you'd need to do is figure out what are these spots where they're crossing, like right there. Well, then I take this equation right here, and I take this equation right here, which is that y equals 15, and I put them together. And I put this one in this one, and I put a 15 right there, and then I say that must be 45. So that spot right there must be 45, comma 15. How many of you knew that that spot was 45, comma 15? Awesome. And that can help you tell, like, where exactly this thing is crossing. All right. Now, when it's all said and done, if I were to actually draw this a little bit better, I think I can give you a better picture of how it's supposed to come out. Yes. That was a spot. That was a spot which we just said 45, 15. And this is a spot, and this is a spot, and that is a spot. Those are your 5 corners, all of which are runners-up for most profit. So I'm going to make a list of them. This one says 15 right on this line, and this one was at 20, so it's 20, comma 15. 20, comma 15 is one of the important vertices. Another one is at the x-axis, so it's where y equals 0, so 20, comma 0 is one of your corners. The next one, we already have talked about this one twice, 45, comma 15. And then there's one right here. Can somebody help me out with that one? It's where 50 goes into that other equation. 50, comma what? 50, comma 10. All right, I'm going to just remind you, you have an answer key. I'm going to finish this video while you guys walk off to your next class. So if you want to see the ending to this, you can watch the video and see it. Okay, but don't forget that your review worksheet for tonight has all the answers on the answer key. Study. This is not going to be an easy one. All right, so this one is 50, comma 10. And this one down here, that is the x-axis, so it's where y equals 0. And y equals 0 intersecting with x equals 50. This would have to be 50, comma 0. So 50, comma 0. Then I'm going to figure out the profit using the profit function for each of these. The profit is going to be P of x is equal to 50 cents for each banana bread plus 25 cents for each Pop-Tart. And now I'm going to put these into the calculator and figure out which one gets the most. Okay, so I'm not going to put in all of these for you just for the sake of time on the video. I'm going to show you the one that wins. 50 comma 10 gets you the biggest amount. And the way you do this is you go 50 of the x times, what in my little equation do I get for that? 0.5, 50 cents for each. Plus, I have 10 y's, so I get 10 times the 25 cents, also known as 250. That's 27.50. And that's the biggest profit we had, was 27.50 at that spot. If you check all these other ones, and you put them into that profit equation, they all come out with numbers that are smaller than 27.50. So our best spot was 50 comma 10, and you got a profit of $27.50. All right, it's not an easy test tomorrow. I strongly recommend that you study and you know how to find where things intersect with your calculator, that you can also do where things intersect using algebra, you know, like using your head, because when you have x equals 20, you can't put that in a calculator. You just have to put that in the other equation. All right, that's all I have for you for today.